Okay. All right. So, Shavua Tov, everybody. Shavua Tov Me'od. We want to dedicate this session of learning to the Hatzlacha and safety of the holy soldiers of Am Yisrael.
Amen.
And for the safety of everybody, all the souls in Am Yisrael.
Amen.
And to be Mezakeh Am Yisrael, that we should be Zocha to the Geula Shlema B'Meher V'Yameinu. Okay, so where we left off, we were in the middle of a piece by the Alshech HaKadosh discussing features of Gan Eden, and the verse that talked about that there's a tree of life in the middle of the garden, and a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So we started to talk about the Eitz HaChaim. Why does it have to say it's B'toch HaGan? It's in the middle. What's its centrality? And we talked about how that tree was really the cosmic Torah, and all the sparks and lights of the mitzvot that emanate from it around it are the spiritual roots of all kinds of manifestations of delicacies, of spiritual delights, which were the flora of Gan Eden. So that was the Eitz HaChaim is the Torah. And then we said, what's the Eitz HaDat, Tov v'Ra? Why does it say the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Let us say the tree of good and evil. So we were talking about some of that stuff. So let's discuss now. I think we're to the end of this piece. We're going to talk a little bit about the nature of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and how that affected Adam. We might get to talk about unicorns today, which is a topic that always gets me excited. If you put on tefillin today, then you've been a unicorn. Okay, so all right, so we're going to pick up on page 33, Lamed Gimel, from the second to last paragraph on the page. V'zeh ma'amar hakatuv, and this is what the verse is referring to when it says, Vayatzmach Hashem Elokim kol eitz nechmad lemar'eh, that God sprouted forth in the garden all manner of tree. Remember, we said that the description of the verse was there was trees that were a delight to behold, and they were pleasant to behold, and they were good to eat. And we talked about how this represents two different categories of mitzvot. You have the mitzvot that appeal to your intellect. They have a tam, they have a taste. You can assimilate some sort of rationale behind it. Those are the ones that are good to eat. And then there are the ones that those are the ones that are good to be seen. They appeal to the rationale. There's an aesthetic to it, an abstract, right? It makes sense to you. And then there are ones that you got to eat, right? Ta'amu ur'u, taste and see ki tov Hashem. It's only once you're involved in them that you experience the spiritual benefits, and you start to benefit from a vision of God's spiritual instruction. But on the face of it, from human intellect, you wouldn't necessarily appreciate. So those are the two trees describing the two different categories of mitzvot. Shehem shnei sugei mitzvot shekatavnu. These are the two categories of mitzvot that we have aforementioned. V'gam ve'etz hachayim. There's also the tree of life. Hi haTorah. That's the Torah. Kilomar, as if to say, Hine lecha chemdat mareh v'tov ma'achal v'hana'ah u'malacha od. You have a desire of sweet sights and that which is delicious to taste and pleasure. And what do you have more than that? What do you have more? What could be if you have a verse that lists all these wonderful things? What could you possibly add? So then the flip side, the opposite, in contrast to all the eitz nechmad l'mareh v'tov l'ma'achal, etc., is the eitz hadat tov v'ra. So the pasuk is setting up the eitz hadat as a counter to the eitz hachayim. Shehu hatzomeach hayidei ish shemitasek l'dat tov v'ra. So we're going to develop this notion of the eitz hadat that is an attempt to grasp the truth of life from man's perspective, from the outside. It's when man decides, listen, I think we mentioned this before, that he puts the Torah aside and he says, I need to, through my own engagement with reality, I'm going to determine, I'm going to learn the hard way, right? I'm gonna go into life and learn my lessons and really decide for myself what is proper, what is good, and what is not.
Is it suggesting that the Eitz Hadat Tovera is the opposite of everything that you just described before? That it's nice for the eyes and it's tasty.
Yeah, exactly. That's it's a contrast. And now behold, leumat to the other side entirely. Yeah. Meaning he's setting them up as contradictory forces, as opposed to, it's not like the Eitz Hadat Tovera is a really bad way to getting to the same place as the Eitz HaChaim. It's just a different path, which is guaranteed failure. Here, he's going to discuss it.
I mean, it's just loading up the question of why would they have chosen that?
What do you mean?
Why would Adam have chosen?
Why did he do it?
Why did he do it if it was the complete opposite of all the good things that you just said?
Okay, so we're building the question now. Once we understand what the challenge of the Nisayon was and what he did that was bad, then we'll have to ask how could he fall for it.
Right.
Okay. So what is this Eitz Hadat Avera, which we already start talking about how a person says, Bishrirot libi nelech, right, elech, and I'm going to discover everything myself, right? So, Shehu Hatzomeach Ayidei Ish. So the Eitz Hadat, the tree of knowledge, is that which man plants. Meaning, if the Eitz HaChaim is that which God planted, the Eitz Hadat is that which man plants.
But he didn't plant it.
Okay? It sprouts Ayidei Ish, through the hands of a man, Shemit Asek, who is involved, Lada Tovera, to know good and evil. Let me ask you something. Are we interested in knowing evil?
No.
We're interested in knowing good and avoiding evil.
Right.
Okay, so somehow this person wants to know good and evil. Livror b'sichlo, in order to filter and separate in his own mind, al pi chakirato, according to his investigations. And on this, his hero Yitbarach et Adam, God warned man, Mikol eitz haganachol, from all the trees of the garden eat, ba'olam hazeh, in this world, tochel, ba'olam haba, so achol tochel. So the verse says you shall surely eat, a double verb. So achol, eat in this world, tochel, and it will be given to you to eat, ba'olam haba, in the coming world. It's an investment. Or achol, eat, b'machshava v'kavana, in your thought and your intention, tochel, and then make it manifest in b'ma'aseh, in action. V'alzeh amar, and on this, the verse continues, however, me'etz hadat, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, lo tochal, don't eat, one word, right? It says, achol tochel, by the good stuff, and by the eitz hadat it says, don't even consider it, afilu b'machshava, even in your mind. Ki halot tit'eh, because certainly you will stray. V'lo teda latzet b'shalom, and you will not know how to get out in peace. Ki sham chelkat koach hasatan hamifates safun, because that is the field in which the Satan has free reign. Meaning, in your mind, in your thoughts, that's the theater of the imagination. Right? That's your ability to contemplate, have all kinds of thought experiments. Really, you're free to entertain. And in that arena, that's exactly, right, where the Satan is waiting for you to mess you up. That's his home advantage. Now, the truth is that you and I believe, I've always taken for granted, that this setup that we're talking about, how your mind, your imagination is mitigated by the Satan, that's a function of eating from the Eitz Hadat. I always understood that Adam Rishon was pure, and then he ate, and now we have this problem.
That's right. That's what I
Right. So, and it could be that that's exactly what happened, and Alshech is saying the Torah is presenting it here to tell us, because that was all the setup. And this is our situation, and we're being instructed, meaning it's not just Adam's story that's being recorded, but it's an instruction for us that after the Eitz Hadat, meaning you have to be aware that you have a choice between the Eitz HaChaim and Eitz Hadat now. Okay? Meaning, you could ask that question, but it's also not necessarily a question. Okay. Okay,
but
yeah.
what is the truth? Are you saying that are you saying that it's not the case that it only entered him when he
So I think in the next paragraph, we're going to touch upon the issue that you mentioned before about what was going through Adam's head.
Right.
It was a big horn. We'll see. No joke. Okay. All right. So don't even consider this alternative path of investigating reality, like coming to see and understand the goodness of reality, trying to apprehend goodness or God, right? Through your stumbling through things without a concern or a pledge to uphold good. I mean, you're giving room to entertain Ra in your mind. And that's where the Satan hangs out. V'yeta Rashi Am Avelim Sha'olah. And even the heads of nations will go out, the heads of the nation will go out mournfully to the abyss. Okay, meaning it doesn't matter how great you are, this is a bad way to go. And if any of you have read Ecclesiastes or seen any of the midrashim about Shlomo Melech, that's enough of a double cautionary tale. Okay, so it says, Ki biyom achalcha mimenu mot. On the day that you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you will die. And just like by the tree of life, it says a double verb, you should surely eat. Whereas by the tree of knowledge, it only says you should eat once. It says by the tree of knowledge, on the day you eat, mot, you will die, be'olam hazeh, it will destroy your mortal world here, your mortal life in olam hazeh. And tamut, a double language of you will surely die, be'olam haba, it'll be destructive in both realms. There's a famous line from Slabotka, from the Balei Musar, that those in Europe, the students of the yeshiva that ended up becoming maskilim and living more hedonistic lives. So the line at the end was, there's a few famous people from Slabotka that said afterwards that they didn't end up with olam hazeh or olam haba. So it's a really, really bad experiment. Because you're full of regrets about this world. It's not like you cashed in your chips early. They made a mess of things. Okay, so v'lo yibatzer mimcha mehidavek biyadcha me'uma min hachera mahu. And it's impossible that you will escape unscathed without any sort of negativity clinging to you or sticking to you from that terrible realm of knowledge of good and evil. V'chein hayalo, and so that is what happened to Adam. Ki hetzitz v'met. He peaked and he died. Lulei Shabbat hegen alav, if it wasn't for the Holy Sabbath that protected him, haya yom hamavet biyom hivaldo, his death day would have been on the day he was born.
Really?
That's what it says.
Wow.
So that's the medrash. There's different accounts. One medrash says that, meaning everything happened on Yom Shishi, and really by rights he should have been banished from Gan Eden before Shabbos, but God didn't want to ruin the first Shabbos, so he let him stay, and that's why we make a Bari Marei Ha'esh on Motzei Shabbat, because he kicked him out afterwards, and he gave him fire.
But he's saying that it delayed his death by 1,000 years.
Well, he doesn't say 1,000. Well, yeah. But that's right. That's there's a whole bunch of midrashim, right? Because it says the pasuk in Tehillim says that one day in your eyes is 1,000 years, and it says on the day that you will surely die. So really, that meant 1,000 years, right? Okay. And we know he only lived 930 because he gave 70 years to
David.
There you go. Okay. V'zel ma'amar Ramzal, and this is what our sages say in Sanhedrin. Adam Harishon min haya. Adam Harishon was a non-believer. So one of the ways, there's so many interesting ways that the Midrash characterizes the sin of the eating from the Eitz Hadat. One of the famous ones is that he was an apikoros. He was a min. He was a non-believer.
It's impossible.
Obviously. He's
Hashem
talking to God.
spoke to him directly.
Right.
And he spoke to God. So
Right. So what is the problem with being a min? V'chein amru, and they also said in Bereshit Rabbah, ki Chava, what did Chava do? So let's pretend that we know that the fruit of the Eitz Hadat was a grape. So Chava sachta anavim v'hishkato. She turned the grapes into wine. She squeezed them into wine, and she gave him to drink. Ki sachata hadvarim atamtzit hachakira. What does that mean? That is it is a literary description of when you process something, when you crush something to get to the essential essence. That it's supposed to denote here, the Alshech HaKadosh is saying, according to this midrash, that from his own strength, he processed reality and crushed it till he got juice that came out that intoxicated him. Okay? Ad shenishtaker, until he was, meaning kisachata, he squeezed hadvarim, the things, ad meaning
the grapes.
Yeah, but over here doesn't. Hadvarim means the issues, meaning he wrestled with the issues ad tamtzita chakira, until the essential, the till you can not inquire anymore. Right? Till the end of inquiry. Ad shenishtaker, until he became intoxicated, v'nitbal b'ladaito, and his mind, his knowledge became confused. V'karalo kimisha hitzitz v'nifka, and we call him, like we refer to him as somebody who peaked and was hurt. Meaning this. So in Yiddishkeit we have this phrase that he peeked and was hurt. It's like there's things that mortals do not have the ability to look at, and from their hubris they look at it, and eventually it hurts them. Whether it's the people that were meant not to gaze by Matan Torah, or not to look at the Kohanim when they duchen. But there's this idea that a man has to have, in order to be successful, you have to have a humble sense of what you can process, where you belong, where you don't belong, and you shouldn't mess with fire. And there's a certain type of hubris, that spiritual hubris, that usually we have this problem. We look, we engage, we trod where we're not meant to, and ultimately we get hurt.
Like the Pardes.
Exactly. So what the whole idea of the Pardes Rabbi Akiva was nichnas v'yotze b'shalom. And one of the lines that Alshech said before was that I think there was a reference to it actually. Here he says, "Ki halot tit'eh," he will surely stray, v'lo teda latzek b'shalom, and he will not know how to leave in peace. Yeah. So that's a reference, same idea. Okay, meaning don't take on things that you're being told ahead of time will be damaging to you and will corrupt your sense of experience, and you won't understand. So what does it mean he's a mean? Whatever that engagement with the tree of knowledge of good and evil was, it ended up mitigating him, leaving him lacking, meaning essentially on the opposite side of reality, not being able left with his own tools, not to be able to accept reality. And from his own mind, right, he was stuck with a vision that from his own mind stopped him from being able to engage the truth of God. So in a way, he's a min.
And yet he still conversed with God after eating.
I'm pretty sure that most of the minim that we know converse with God regularly. Meaning min doesn't mean, it's almost like it's like on a very simple level, it means somebody who denies God.
Right.
But that's not what's going on here. It's somebody whose being is built in a way to deny the God that he's meant to connect to. You know, it doesn't have to be just a mental idea of there is a God or not. You could totally, who cares what's going on in your head, right? Are you open to that reality or not? So now what's occurring is the mess is going on in his dot, in his head. Okay? The karalo kemisha hitzitz v'nifka, and therefore in the medrash when we call him a min, like we talked about acher in the Pardes, right? How can he be engaged in Pardes and at the same time be a min, right? But somehow it says over there he looked, right, and he was hurt, right, and he comes out saying, right, that he's a min. V'alkein b'shuva b'tshuva letakin av tato. So and then when Adam comes to rectify his sin and to do tshuva, so we're told that hikriv karban b'keren achat b'mitzcha. He brought a sacrifice. It was the first karban ever brought by humanity. It was on Erev Shabbos, and it was Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, right? And it was there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says that it was a makrin mafris. It had a horn and split hoofs.
What did?
The animal that
right? The animal that he sacrificed.
So we say the Medrash says that he brought a karban that had a horn. It had a central horn in its head. It had one horn. Right? So what's the significance that the animal that Adam Rishon brought as a sacrifice, right, to do tshuva for the Eitz Hadas had one horn? What's this idea? V'hu, and that is kilamashe pagam, that which he corrupted, that he hurt, bishlilut achdut, within the negativity of, it was mitigated in its ability to be unified, v'na'aseh min, and that resulted in him becoming a min, kemishe katzatz chas v'shalom, like somebody who cut the branches off the tree, which is another reference to Acher in the Pardes. Al-Kain b'vo'o letaken v'shav el-emunat hayichud. Therefore, when he comes now, he arrives to rectify that and to return to the faith of oneness, meaning to have a unified, right, existence. Hevi karban hamar al-achdut. He brings an animal that speaks about unification. I'm gonna take a moment after this to talk about this for a second. V'hu, and that is ki hakeren mashal el malchut. The horn is a metaphor or a literary allusion to malchut, the kingdom of Mashiach or of God. Kemufurash b'chalomot Daniel, as is explained in the dreams of Daniel. V'hoda b'shuvo ki malchut echadu, and therefore he is proclaiming and admitting when he comes to return within the mechitza of God that God's malchut is really one, and it's all one. V'od lanu lemala derech acheret b'ma'amarhu, and we have another. Now we have another approach to this verse. Okay, so this is a deep idea, but it's also kind of out there. It's kind of abstract, but the idea is the Alshech HaKadosh wants to say, I think on a basic literary level, that the significance of the horned animal that Adam Rishon brought lets us know what, from Adam Rishon's perspective, he's trying to atone for and do tshuva. And somehow, when you mess with the Eitz Hadat, Tov V'Ra, there's a bifurcation of the unity, the experience of being and of God's oneness, and that's exactly, and that's expressed in Tov V'Ra. There's already some sort of right, and when it shatters and splinters a person, meaning that approach to understanding reality from a splintered perspective does not allow for the unification and holism of reality, that you could be connected with God in oneness. So the Amin, somebody who's not able to be in the oneness, experiences things in this bifurcation of good and evil. So in order to atone for that, it's interesting, the animals usually have more than one horn.
Yeah.
Right? 2 horns. And that the nature of reality, our experience of reality after the Eitz Hadat, is there's a duality. There's duality in everything. Okay? And instead of seeing how the duality makes up the oneness, it's a duality that diverges. And, you got two sides. You have your right side and your left side. You have your gvura and your chesed, and you have your 2 brains, right? And the point is that if you could take all this and marshal it, that it's unified. So a horn is the expression, outside, external expression of the energy inside something becoming strong and powerful to be wielded as a force in the outside world. It's a projection outwards.
It's interesting. It's almost like Keter is unification. And then you have Chokhmah and Bina, which is duality. And then Tiferet is the unification of those two. It's almost saying that the Tiferet is at a higher level than the Keter, in a way, because you've gone down the duality and brought it back again.
If you want to go there, so just to map out from the beginning to the end, you have potential and actual. So Keter is everything in potentiality, and Malchut is everything in actuality. Right. So everything in potentiality is always inherently one. But the problem is, in order to make it manifest, in the world of manifestation, that's when it starts naturally to break apart. So in order for Keter to become manifest, it starts being manifest more and more, but then it starts being broken down more and more. So it has to come to a place at the end where all those pieces that became manifest then get reintegrated, and that's a full integration of the system. So it's kind of like it starts at a point and goes up to many, many things, and then it all comes together again at the other point. Right? Yeah. Because it's potential to actual. So like in order to actualize anything, you have to start breaking things apart, and little pieces need to be actualized.
But the question is the actual Malchut at a higher level than the potential, or the other way around?
So there's a plus and a minus. It's always like that. It's men and women.
It's what?
Men and women. You have nothing without a woman. A woman has nothing without meaning she doesn't draw all the way far back to draw from. She takes the potential of the universe and makes it real. The potential of the universe is moot without her, and it's the greatest thing. And therefore, in terms of the thing that makes it, it's operating on that level. What's great about Malchus is everything, because it's what makes everything work. And that's why it's so crucial. And at the same time, Malchus, from Malchus's perspective, has nothing of her own. It's all because of Keter.
Nice.
Okay, so the idea of the horn, the one horn, is imagine the duality, inherent duality, coming all together in a unification that bursts forth, right? And that's really the idea here is that when you bring a korban, you're putting yourself on the altar, and you're saying either that you want to sacrifice that part of you, the animal part of you, the part of you that's wild and that needs to be integrated, that has not been led and shepherded in the right way. You want to, that part of you want to donate to God and to become close and to be consumed by your connection with God. At the same time, right? Meaning it's not just the part of him that caused the sin, it's what he wants to be, that he's offering himself on the Mizbeach, and he's taking this unique animal and he's saying, this I'm recognizing that this is where I was supposed to be, this is what I want to be, this is the self that I want to bring close to God. And therefore we're seeing the significance of that anatomical anomaly of that creature as the symbol of what Adam Rishon is trying to atone for. Okay, so that's the idea of the horn. Now, a horn is harem keren mishichecha, right? There's always a horn when we talk about David HaMelech, or we talk about Mashiach, or we talk about Malchut, and that's really, like you're saying, the crown, right? It's that, it's interesting. We say, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, and Oter Yisrael b'tifara. And there are those that say that Ozer Yisrael, he who girds Am Yisrael with strength, that's a reference to the tefillin shel yad, and Oter Yisrael b'tifara, he who crowns Israel with beauty, right? That's the tefillin shel rosh. So that means that the tefillin of the yad, we can look at that as something that binds you, and the tefillin of the head is something, it's a crown. So just to say like this, that when you bind something to you, right, the idea of putting the tefillin on the arm is that we're saying that our actions and our agency, we're binding to God, that it should be batal, that it should work on God's behalf, right? We're donating that to God, meaning we're binding it down, we're limiting it for a particular purpose. When we put the tefillin on our heads, we're not just trying to hold something from the outside in, it's actually a crown. A crown is something that projects something outwards, meaning somebody who's a king, the crown is there to let you know an inherent thing that he has in him that should be seen. He's projecting an essence outwards, and that's what the crown of our tefillin are. Meaning, instead of holding something down, it is the godliness in us now that we want to project. So the projective aspect of the crown, of the keter, of the horn, this is the idea of the malchut, that it's something hidden that's coming out into the world now with full force and is manifest. Okay, so that's the horn we have here. And it's coming to speak of achdut, because malchut is meaningless without, like we're saying, the integration of everything that came before. That's when malchut is achieved. So it's the integration, as opposed to the experience of bifurcation and chaos, and of the experience of the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra.
Is there any significance to the fact that we don't have unicorns today, that they don't exist?
Well, there's two sets of unicorns. That's a separate discussion. There's this particular animal was not a unicorn. It just happened to have a horn. It was part of another species. And then there's the unicorn called the tachash, which was used to make the Mishkan. And that has also, it's tied to this, but it's its own idea, and it was only made for them, and there's none meant to survive. They were made just for that. And maybe we could talk about that when we get to Truma at Tzaver Vayakel Pekude. It's very interesting because the Tachash is also called the Saskona, which is Sasa Gvanav. He's also known, it's not just that he has one horn, but he has many colors that he's very proud of, and that's the significance of Yosef HaTzadik. There's other stuff to work with here, but this is the special shor, the ox of Bereshis that had one horn. Okay, so, and that's Daniel's vision, where V'hoda B'shuva ki ha-malchus echad hu, that the malchus, there is only one malchut, that's God's malchut. Ve'od lanu l'mala derech acheret b'ma'amaru. Okay, so now let's see. There's Val hishamer mikol hachachma chitzoniyat hahi. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how this inquiry that is available to man from man's perspective to try to grasp and apprehend the truth of existence, the Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, this is what Chazal usually refer to as chachma chitzonit, meaning the outside wisdom. That's the terminology that we use, and maybe we can explore a little bit why it's always called outside wisdom. But anyway, he's here Shlomo b'chachmato k'katuv etzleino. So Shlomo HaMelech warned us when it comes to the investigation through philosophy of the nature of reality. The Amro, when he says nofet titofna siftei zara. What's that word when you pollution? Yes, poisonous pollution will pollute the lips, strange lips, or pollution flows from the pollution of strange lips. Lomar, to say, hishamer, be steadfast and vigilant, watch out. Pen, lest, ve'al titpateh b'chachmat ha'machkar shel hazara, do not be beguiled and seduced by the wisdom of strange inquiry. Ki halo titpateh, for surely you will be seduced. Ki tira metek amareh, you will see the sweetness of its words, b'chakirot sichliot, with all kinds of intellectual inquiry. Ki nofet hanotef dvash. Okay, so actually, nofet over here doesn't mean pollution. It means the sweet drippings of honey. So he's saying actually, okay, in the verse in Mishlei, you should avoid the sweetness, the honey of strange lips. So he's saying that it appears on the surface there is a sweetness that is beguiling. However, V'yale al libcha, and it will rise into your heart. Ki yikrecha ka'ochal nofet. It is precious like eating honeycomb. Shemide achlo divsho yimatze b'tocho, that when you eat a honeycomb, so you suck out the honey, b'tocho sha'ava ba'alat vekut, and you have this wax that is very, very sweet, that is stuck to it. Ken tachshav yidbak biyodcha mitocha eze davar mamshi'i shetidbak bo. So you'll be licking the honey, and it's just taste and flavor, and you're eating wax, and it seems like there's something essential in there. You feel like you're getting substance with the wax.
It's like modern food.
Right, filler. You're eating spiritual bologna. V'lo timtze davar mitdabek, and you'll find that nothing sticks. Ki im v'chalak mishem chika, however, it is smooth like oil. That's right. That's on your palate. So it doesn't stick. She'ein bo davar mamashut, there's no actuality to it. Yidbak b'cha, in order for any of it to stick to you. Shema tomer, lest you say, perhaps you will say, ki berotcha, when you see ki hevel hitig abba. I'm not concerned. I can trust my own judgment, and when I come to something that's not real, I'll turn from it. I'll be disgusted by it. Meaning, I trust myself not to fall prey to things that are not real. Famous last words. Okay, hine, you should know, achrita mara, its end is very bitter. Ki sofa lahashir b'cha merirut, because in the end it will plant and leave within you traces of bitterness. Sfarot asher lo ketort Hashem. It's impossible to be free and clean of any sort of intellectual reasoning that is not from the Torah of God, and ultimately that will poison a person. Mi yitain, and who will give? V'haya merirut kal, that there shouldn't be, meaning there will be at least a very, very faint trace of bitterness, shebahadiach picha yusar, that will that will be in your mouth and will turn you away. Ki imhu kila'ana, shelo yibatzer acharov ha'adachut misha'er merirut ma, ki gam shetarbe b'yishivut Torah Hashem timima lahadiach et tzoat hazara, lo yibatzer mihishaer svara zar b'tzad ma. Okay, interesting. He says it's impossible, it will leave a trace of bitterness like kila'ana, that it's impossible that no matter how much time you spend with, here, do you have a chumash here? Okay. Pasha Nitzavim, I believe. I think it's Nitzavim. Let's look. Okay. Pora Rosh Ula'ana. Okay, so it's like this. In Nitzavim, it's very interesting. It seems to me that the Alshech HaKadosh is taking his whole approach to the Eitzadat Tovera is the Musar of Moshe Rabbeinu in the beginning of Parshat Nitzavim. Okay? Because he just quoted, he used the word la'ana, and over here, I'm going to read it to you, but here he says, second, I just had it. Here it is. Wormwood. La'ana is wormwood. So he says, wormwood, there's no way to keep it from being bitter. It's always going to be bitter. And so the Alshech HaKadosh just said that that way of apprehending reality is wormwood. Okay, I'm going to read to you the words of Moshe Rabbeinu. Pen yesh bachem ish o isha o mishpacha o shevet asher levavo foneh hayom ni'im Adonai Eloheinu lalechet la'avod et Elohei hagoyim hahem pen yesh bachem shorish porei rosh v'la'ana. Here he's saying right, Temnitzavim Hayom Kochem, right, not with you alone did I seal this covenant, but with whoever is here and whoever is not here today, this is forever, for you know how we dwelled in the land of Egypt and how we passed through the midst of the nations through whom you passed. And you saw their abominations and their detestable idols of wood and stone, of silver and gold that were with them. Perhaps there is among you a man or woman, or a family or tribe, whose heart turns away today from being with Hashem, our God, to go and serve the gods of those nations. Perhaps there is among you a root flourishing with gall and wormwood. And it will be that when he hears the words of the imprecation, he will bless himself in his heart, saying, peace will be with me, though I walk as my heart sees fit. That's what the Alshech is going with. Here, he says that a person will say, Hitbarech bilvavo, he'll tell himself, Lemar, Shalom yeli, I'll be okay. Ki b'shrirot libi le'elech, I'm going to go according to how my heart sees fit in order to figure out what reality is. Leman sefot harava et hatzmeah, thereby adding the watered upon the thirsty. Lo yoveh Adonai Seloach lo ki az yeshan af Adonai v'kinaso b'ish ahu v'rav tzabo kol ha'ala ha'ktuva b'sefer hazeh u'mach Adonai yeshema mitach hashamayim, etc., etc. Okay, so there's some actual words that the Alshech is quoting from here, and I think that the idea, meaning this is a companion piece to his point here, but he's saying that it is impossible to go to college and get a doctorate in Greek philosophy and still go on the base medrash and learn, and that it won't affect you. That's what he's going to say right now. It's impossible that there won't stay some sort of trace of bitterness, no matter how much he tries to clean himself from these mistaken philosophies afterwards. Even when he makes plentiful in his learning of God's Torah afterwards, Timima, in a wholesome and honest and complete way, Svara Zara B'tzad Ma, he still has strange or alien thoughts on some level. V'shema Tomar, perhaps he will say, Halohi mileach hidudim. It's filled with sharp points. Uletoem mechiduda koidem lilibuna ad shelo tisrefeni efrosh. And to taste from its sharpness before I purify myself and clean myself, so that I should not burn, I will abstain. Meaning, Shelo achavein, I will not intend rak, just for l'chibat achidud, for the love of sharpening. Meaning, a person could say, hey, I'm learning Torah, and I still feel that there's some sort of intellectual benefit from contrasting and sharpening myself against these alien approaches. Lezeh amar, to this, it says, chada. Okay, one second. I think he's still going on the pasuk in Mishlei. Do we have a Mishlei here? Let's look at a Mishlei. We don't have a Mishlei. We'll have to look at a Mishlei next time. Okay. So bitam riviyah k'magbi'a kol ve'omer, right? Like somebody who raises his voice and proclaims, "Mashihi chada," that which is sharp. Sha'al kein tivcharena v'tachbotzba, because something that's sharp, an instrument that's sharp, is useful in order to make choice. Tivcharena, it will be able to delineate. V'tachbotzba, and I will desire with this to use this tool. Haloch chiduda, however, its sharpness, hu lecha kecherev pios, it is sharp to you like a double-edged sword, meaning you're going to really cut yourself. Hachotech b'peh ha'echad et gufcha, that somebody who slices his own body with one side of the sword, uvasheni et hanefesh, and with the other side his soul. Ve'ein tzarich lomar haskamat chachamei achar chakira shehim deot ra'ot v'kozvot. You don't need the philosophers themselves to acquiesce to you that their knowledges, their systems of thought, and their ideas are evil and false. Ki em afilo hatchaloteha ki hine raglea hem shtei ragle hanachot hahekesh. Meaning, even the whole basis, what they are built upon, are its legs. They are two legs, meaning the whole alternative to Torah is based on two presuppositions, hahekesh, of similarity, lohotzia tolda v'nafkusa, in order to draw out the ramifications and implications. Okay, a tolda is that which is born out from something. V'nafkusa means something that comes out of something. Meaning, the idea of philosophy here, he's saying, is that you have some sort of knowledge, a piece of knowledge that you have, an idea, and you project from that something outside. You're making a binyan, right? Heim yardot mavet, that approach is Okay, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Ragleha yardu mavet, that her legs descended until death. And he's alluding to the pasuk here, that they go, meaning the Ragleha, the foundations of that, of human inquiry and intellect in order to apprehend reason and truth, are it's impossible that they don't descend to death. Kihem hanachot shikriyot hefech dat emet. They are presuppositions that they are dubious. They are spurious, and the opposite of true knowledge. V'im kain, and if so, va'adai shetza'adeh. It's her footsteps, what you can go with her, meaning those legs that you could travel with, those steps that you take with those legs, hayotzim raglah, that come out of her feet. Hema toladot. That's okay. He's saying that it's based on lies, and therefore you can't go anywhere doesn't have lies. Shed Sha'ol yitmochu, that ultimately they will take one to the abyss of Sha'ol.
Is he suggesting that we shouldn't use our human inquiry?
He's saying that outside, not using intellect through the investigation or within the framework of Torah, it's useful. But by itself, without that, it's guaranteed death. Right? You can't use, meaning if you want to just start in a vacuum outside and use your intellect from the inside out in the most basic way, it's impossible. That's what he's saying.
You can use it with Torah.
You're meant to use it with Torah. God gave you an intellect. Right? A brain's meant to work. But if it's not working within the parameters of Torah, you're lost by yourself. And it needs to be used in the surface of Torah. But we're not, chas v'shalom, saying that intellect and rationale, that's something that God gave us. But, I'll tell you, like, for example, if we didn't have a Torah Shebaal Peh that tells you the 13 rules of engagement in terms of being able to use logic and rationale in order to divine what God wanted, right? It's amazing. If you look in the Sansino Gemara, there is a Latin translation for every one of the Yud Gimel Midot. That means that the Greeks have corollaries for, like a Kal V'chomer is called an afiorti. These are recognized secular, logical, what we use for hermeneutics, and to determine the divine message encoded in the literature of the Torah Shebaal Peh, right? Those are seen as, there's a whole parallel from a secular perspective. Now, does someone say, like, how do you approach that? What does that mean? Does that mean that the Greeks are right and we also use it for this and this is what God gave us, but the Greeks are right and you could use it independently and they arrived at that independently? Or do we say, don't be fooled, the only reason why we could trust the Yud Gimel Midot is because God gave it to us, and the fact that they came up with something, some sort of correlate, right? So the Alshech is saying, don't fall for that. Don't think. Meaning human rationale was invested by God, so it only makes sense to use it the way God intended for you to use. And that's what he's saying. And without that, you're basically eating from the Eitz Hadat. That's what it seems that he's saying, and he's saying that it's all based on falseness. Okay. Shekol kach hein raot, they're so bad and evil. Shelo yunach haya shaol mitbatel lehader chotaim avon hama'amin b'toladot elo maspikin l'tmoch et shaol bal yimot. He said that this stuff is so bad that if sinners stopped sinning, you would still be overcrowded in Gehenna just from the people who it would be filled with people who entertain philosophy. Meaning, he says the avon, the sin of those that believe in the conclusions of philosophy would be enough to fill Sha'ol, that there would be no vacancy. Ki be'ele shamen chalko, because with these thoughts and this type of thinking and these people, its portion has been fattened. Ki gadol avonam minso, because their sin is too great to bear. V'chol sha'ol yitztarech li'itkayin b'shvilam, and you would need all of hell in order to hold them all. U're'ei ki ra'atcha rabba, and see how your evil is great. Ki halo yarei ani, meaning these are not people that did anything. These aren't people that did anything. You have a sin, an act of sin, and in his mind and in his heart, that's, wherever he has a problem with God, but the main problem is in the physical world. It's the action. And then here's a guy who hasn't done anything, and he has given his mind as a playground for the lack. He's basically guaranteed that the Shekhinah can't be in his mind. Right? Torah Hashem. Okay, so Ki halo yarei ani pen yiyu shnei hadvarim shekulim beinecha. I fear lest these two things be equal in your eyes. Torah Hashem ukfirat hazara. Don't think, says Alshech HaKadosh. He's making an appeal to the reader. Don't think that the divine knowledge of the Torah of God is the same as the kfira of strange alien thoughts. V'tavo lapeles, and you will come to the level, bepeles sichlecha, with the, a peles is a tool that's used to, I forgot what it's called in English, but it's a level, or a lever, it's meant to tell you, it's meant to measure that which is straight. It has a bubble in it, and it tells you. So, meaning it's the peles of your mind to tell you what's straight and what's right. The peles sichlecha ladat ezahi emet. You cannot rely on the peles of your mind to determine what's true or not. You know, do you follow what a peles is? What do they call it? A level, right?
It's a level.
Yeah, it's got, right. You can hold it vertically or horizontally, and it's got bubbles on it to tell you when something's exactly straight. Yeah. So you imagine in your mind that you got one of those, but you don't. It's pretty lopsided, and it's got bubbles to tell you, from whatever ta'avot you have that you don't even know that. Okay, so ozeh, right? It's one or the other. Vizehu orach chayim hi Torah, the path of life, that is the Torah, pen tifales, because the pasuk says, lest you lose your balance. Ezo hi emet, what is truth? Ve'ein lecha ra'a gedola mizo chalila, and you don't have a greater evil than that which corrupts your sense of what can be true in your mind. Meaning the greatest evil is the roots of the corruption of being able to see truth. And who will give that you should have the knowledge in order to be able to discern truth yourself. I have become silent. What will you do? So na'u magloteh, her steps, the palms of her feet have become shaken, or shaken off their standing. Ki ein mavo, there is no approach for the human seichel, for the human intellect, to stand on the depths of these issues. Nimtza, turns out, shelo teda lahachriya letzad ha'emet, it's impossible for a person to be able to determine what's truth. V'tesher navoch, and he will stay confused and perplexed. Otita alazara v'tovad, or he will turn to that which is alien and not true, not real, and he will be lost. L'chein, therefore, ve'ata banim, now, sons, kimforash etzleinu b'mkoma b'siyata d'shmaya. He's appealing for us. He's quoting a pasuk ve'ata banim. I don't know what pasuk he is referring to here. It could be a continuation of Orach Chaim Pentifales. He's going with the Mishlei. I don't know what this pasuk is about, but he's making an appeal, and he's saying, now, what is the truth? But the Torah, please take the Torah, Ta'amur ki tov Hashem, and stay away from that nasty stuff that is just man's imagination left to his own devices. So, and yeah, we could. And he says, okay, Kimefarash etzleinu b'mekoma b'siyata d'shmaya. Okay, v'nachzor al ha'inyan. So, we will return to the issue. Ki hisiru Torah et Adam, ba yelech achar chakira pen yovad. The Torah is warning us, don't go after human inquiry lest you be lost. V'lo asaken, and Adam did not do that. Rak sachata anavim, he squeezed those grapes. V'natna lo, she squeezed the grapes and gave it to him, kasher perashnu, like we explained. Ki sachata hadvarim api chakirat zichla, she processed the matter according to the processing of her intellect. V'natna lo, and then delivered to him her conclusions. V'zeh yeh data omer gefen haya. And this is according to the Midrash, the opinion that explains the fruit of the tree of knowledge as being a grape. V'hine yesh gam deot acherot. There are other Midrashim, other opinions. Yesh omrim teina hayta. There are those that say it was a fig. V'yesh omrim etrog. And there are those that say that it was a citrus. V'yesh omer chita. And there are those that say that it was wheat. Efshar sheha omer etrog. And it's possible he's going to take a moment to say, that the esrog looks like a heart. Da'ato shebilibo chata bilvad. It is only the thought in his heart that sinned. V'ha'omer chita.
That's not true. Because he actually did it. It's not just his heart.
Meaning when he ate the fruit, it's saying that the sin was his heart. The sin was in his heart. That's what he's saying.
It entered his heart.
da'ato
Because really,
shebili.
the real sin, the first sin was the sight.
One second. When I say da'ato shebili bo chatat bilvad, only. Why do I say only? As opposed to what? Where could the sin be? There's a sin in his, meaning he has dat in his heart and dat in his mind. So if I say the sin it was only in his heart, I'm saying he knew the truth. It was his heart that was lacking. That's why he ate. It wasn't an intellectual thing. Meaning the symbolism of that he ate from the tree, we're going to say that it was an esrog, meaning the sin was in his heart. He took us into his heart, not his mind. Meaning maybe the eating affected his mind afterwards, but his mind was fine. It was the heart that's where the sin was. I think that's what he's saying.
Right.
Okay? Okay. So that's the esrog. And then Va'omer chita, the one who says that the fruit, we can characterize the fruit of the tree of knowledge that he ate as a wheat. Hu shegam chata b'sfatav, the fact that it was a stalk of grain means that he sinned with his mouth. Domeh lechita sheyesh la me'en chituch la'arka me'en chituch sheben shtei hasfatayim. He's saying that the imagery, the symbolism of the stalk of grain with the kernel, if you look at the kernel, it looks like lips. And he's saying that the midrash over there is referring to him sinning with his mouth. What would be the sin of the mouth? I don't know, maybe he'll talk about all this when it happens.
The eating, surely, no?
Yeah, but the eating itself, meaning we're saying the sin of the eating was in the heart before. That seems to be a deeper idea. What would be the sin of the mouth? What he said to Chava, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know, we'll see.
Maybe she said to him, eat from it.
So this is a place where the Alshech discusses the sin only in regards to the tree, because we're talking about the tree of knowledge. So when we actually talk about the sin, I'm sure he'll go exploring it more. This is like a sneak peek. Okay? V'nimshal te'ena, and I'm sorry, I skipped. Okay. The Omer te'ena, the medrash that says that it was a fig, hu shegam b'ma'aseh chata. That means that even in action he sinned. This is another medrash that says that Adam Rishon was created circumcised. He didn't have a foreskin.
Yeah.
But Chazal say that the sin of the Eitz Hadat was that he pulled forth his skin to fashion for himself a foreskin. Meaning he was born without an arla, and he created the arla. And that's obvious. That's the most obvious of all the... you'll see that there's like a whole plethora of midrashim that talk about the sin as if it was an act that had nothing to do with the pasuk. What do you mean? He ate from the tree of... And they say, you know what he did? He entertained... he was a min. He made himself a foreskin. What are you talking about? He ate from a tree. Right? Kamosha Amr, like it says in Sanhedrin, v'nim shal te'ena, right? We know that when the first thing, right, the pasuk says when they were naked, that they fashioned for themselves fig trees to cover their genitalia. Right. So that's a reference to his genitalia. Right. So Kamasha Amrazal v'nim shalatayna Kamasha Amrazal ba'Avram be'Bereshis Rabbah Parshat Milah. Right. It says by Avram Avinu in the story of the Milah that we Amar Rabbi Yudin says Amar Lo Kadosh Baruch Hu, God said to him, Ma te'ena ein bein psolet ela uktzah. There is nothing thrown away when you eat there is no rubbish or refuse from the te'ena, except for its
pip.
It's not its pit, but the
top,
point on top.
Connected with the tree.
Exactly. So, one second.
But that's not...
Ma te'ena ein b'psolet ela uktsa, kach ata ein b'cha psolet ela ha'arla. Hine mashla mashal arla ela te'ena. So you see in reference to Avram Avinu and God that the Milah is reference to a te'ena, and therefore he says that the te'ena must be a reference when they say that the fruit was a fig. That's the approach that says that the sin that he made was that he pulled his foreskin.
But who's quoting is that?
So there's midrashim. There's a whole family of midrashim that talk about what the fruit was, and there's a whole bunch of midrashim that say what the sin was. So he's saying that the medrash that says that the fruit of the Eitz Hadat was a fig is definitely the shita that says that what the sin was fashioning for himself a foreskin. Now we're gonna stop here, but I just want to take a moment and talk about this foreskin business, because how can I pass up the opportunity?
It's this week's parasha.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think that means? Just from a literary point of view.
What do you think?
Meaning to characterize the eating from the Eitz Hadat and the sin as fashioning for himself a foreskin.
Well, we know that the foreskin is where all the evil is located, and we're asked to circumcise to remove that evil from us to have a better chance to fight the Yetzer Hara.
So it sounds like you're going with the Rambam, who says, like, rationally that we want to mitigate the physical animalistic pleasure
Yes.
of the physical acts of intimacy in sexual reproduction, and
Not
we're
just that,
taking a
but
stand, and we're saying we don't identify with the physical pleasure involved, so we're cutting off most of our nerve receptors, right?
Well, it's a cutting off the animalistic desire, not just for sexual things, but for anything.
Okay, there's such a the deep symbolism of the idea. Okay, I'm going to take a moment, really, because it's not so expansive. It's not here, but we have to talk about circumcision. The notion of circumcision is that, why does Avram Avinu have to mark his covenant specifically at the locus of his body, which is the creative ability?
Because that's his heritage, is his children.
It's more than that. He's a covenant with God and man. First of all, we're saying that man's creative efforts and his whole ability to invest in the Bria is married to, it is seen within the context of his covenant with God. That all development, even in terms of his providing for the continuity of his own family, is done, meaning that part of him that invests life and develops life is done all in the context, is rooted in his covenant with God. He's doing it on behalf of God too, meaning in his understanding with God, man's covenant to partner with him and develop the world in a way that God saw fit. We're saying that in that part, that's the most essential place in a human's life, a world that represents his further investment, involvement, and creativity in the world. That has to be done within the context of bris. I mean, you're taking God with you in the development of the world, okay? And therefore, that means that part of you, meaning, why do you think that the most important way that the Torah could tell you that there was a difference between Adam before the Chet and after the Chet is that the first thing he realized was that he needs to cover that up? What does that mean? That's crazy.
Right.
I mean, is that because we're making a big deal, like we're getting all, like, what's this whole idea of nakedness?
Right. What do you think?
I'm saying that part of that feature of human anatomy, which is meant to represent the ability that we have to connect and invest and create, was mitigated now. So now it requires shmira. Because I'll put it to you like this. You could never have, before the achila of the Eitz Hadat, you couldn't have an act of physical connection that didn't inherently have intimacy. And now there's a bifurcation in reality. You can engage in an act of physical procreation or a sexual act that has nothing to do with intimacy.
Intimacy with God.
Intimacy at all. Meaning, it's not necessarily, it is meant to be for connection. And now you can use it without connection. It could be separated from what it was intended, and the whole right. So that means that at the moment of the Achila of Eitz Hadat, all the tools that were invested in the world in order to connect, in order to bring life and to create unity and to connect with God, they don't necessarily do that by themselves and can be used without that, and therefore they need shmira. So, for example, the upshot to say that a person needs to cover their genitals means before they needed to cover, there was no way that was inappropriate. There was nothing, you couldn't use that in a way that was not the way it was meant to be used. Right. Now that it's sensitive, because since it could be used in a way it's not supposed to, you have to be vigilant that it does get used, meaning where the Eitz Hadat's affected reality is that the tools that you have for connection can now be self-serving. They're not inherently automatically connecting all the time. That brings us to the foreskin. The foreskin means, the foreskin was invented after the Eitz Hadat. If Adam Rishon was created, nolad mol, there was never any need. Right. He created the idea of a foreskin, that part of us that's meant to connect, that represents the Brit, how we further the creativity of God on behalf of man, right? Now it has a protective covering that it has the danger of choosing to engage on its terms. And that means, first of all, that we're like a snake, meaning the need to be vulnerable in order for true connection means that you have to take away that foreskin. That foreskin means that you can use connection on your terms and still separate yourself and protect yourself from the implications of connection. It's znut. It means that it's a protective layer that says that is now for you. It's not about connection. That has to be removed. Meaning, true connection, true love, true relationship, whether it's with God and man or it's as represented through sexuality, right, has to be done in a way that it's holy. And the foreskin is basically the post-Eitz Hadat need or of evil to actually, that all those tools that were built into Bria in order to connect are now in danger of being used for their own terms. That's the significance of the Arla is I choose to hide. I want to take from the world and hide as opposed to really being vulnerable and connecting and investing in an honest relationship that allows for intimacy. We say we don't stand for that. And that there's holiness in those tools that God invests in the world in order to do the holy work. That's pretty much, that's the idea of the foreskin. So Adam Rishon invents a foreskin here by basically saying this world is for me. God created a world for me to partner with him and to bring God's mission into actuality and to drive the world creatively on behalf of God. Now I'm doing it all for, meaning when you break that, meaning when you think you're doing it for yourself, what I can benefit from and engage in the world that God set up for that, for my own terms and for my own benefit, that's basically the creation of the foreskin.
You're suggesting that he made teshuvah, which means that the foreskin would have been removed then.
No, later on he did teshuvah. Yeah.
He did teshuvah Yom Shishi.
130 years. 130 years.
So did he ever remove his orla?
He must have, yeah, before he had shet. Yeah.
He did?
He must have. Yeah. He didn't get a command to do milah, but he must have. Yeah.
That's interesting. So he created the orla.
I mean, the whole concept of foreskin only exists because of the eating from the Eitzadas.
Yeah. But he created the orla, and then you said...
Now there's a need for milah. There was never a need for milah before.
Right. But I thought Avram was the first one that had Brit Milah actually put done on him.
Yeah.
You're suggesting
it was never done before.
But you're suggesting that Adam himself was...
there could have been people who were circumcised, but that wasn't a mitzvah of milah. Meaning, the whole significance... If Avraham Avinu kept all the Torah, right? Why didn't he do milah before God told him?
Yeah, because it's a mutilation.
Right, what's the point of doing it by yourself? So the significance of Avraham doing the milah was not just the act of removing the foreskin, that he did it as a covenant with God.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm saying foreskin is an introduction in the world. God made a world without a foreskin, and the foreskin appears because of this. So you have to understand, right, thematically, that's what we're talking about, how this is the whole idea of the foreskin. The creation of the foreskin is a representation of the upshot of the eating of the Eitzadas and how it affected man. And Avraham Avinu as a tikkun is the one his whole legacy and his whole children are those that are removing that from the world, removing that from themselves and removing that from the world in order to engage in a relationship with God the way God intended with Adam.
But you can still, unfortunately today, you can still use your reproductive thing.
Absolutely.
Independently of the intimacy.
Oh, it doesn't. Removing a physical orla doesn't automatically make you now totally ne'aman to Brit. Right. You have to be shomer the Brit.
Right.
But the act is that you're saying that's why milah is not just by us. What really makes milah is not removing the foreskin. It's priya. It's pulling the skin back. And that's a major, major nakuda. That's saying the pnimiut of the Brit Milah. That's the significance. You're forcing yourself to be exposed. That's the point. That you have no safety. You cannot protect yourself from reality on your own terms and engage on your own terms.
That's interesting. But isn't that the reason for clothing, to protect yourself?
No.
And not make yourself vulnerable. It's the same purpose as the foreskin, from what you're saying.
Not at all. No. The foreskin has no benefit. It's only evil. Clothing is very necessary. God created clothing because he wouldn't be able to directly engage with us. Levushim are not, there's a problem with levushim because they're mastir, but they're also facilitate. The arla is purely evil. It is the expression of an evil force that wants to get in the way of intimacy, of connection between God and man, it's self-serving. It's not true connection, but self-serving, consuming. It's all about me and taking and pleasure and me, and it's not connection. I mean, even if there's another person involved, it's just mutually self-serving. There's no actual connection. That's the state of being in the world today. So meaning it's not just a sexual thing. It's really what sexuality represents ultimately. I mean, you have to really deal with the whole idea of sexuality in terms of understanding really what the Eitzadas is all about.
What you're saying, sexuality represents what?
Sexuality in its purest terms is intimacy and creativity.
In its purest terms.
Yeah, and that's meaning that
But
inherently
you're
what
saying
God
the
would
aura-
made.
But you think that the aura represents
See,
sexuality.
all those issues, negative issues of sexuality, the way we take for granted, are all invented by eating from the Eitz Hadas. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's also, I mean, it's a deeper theme. That's the whole idea of Nachash, that he really wanted to rape her. There's, I mean, hopefully, I mean, there will be other sugyot where we talk about that, but to understand the significance of the Arla is you have to understand, before you think about sex at all, you have to think about how this is meant to be a way of connecting in the deepest, truest way to existence, the idea of connection, and now having some sort of a spontaneously generated, self-serving, protective shield that allows you now to engage on your own terms only, and undoes the whole reason why it was created.
And just remind us again why Dafka, the reproductive system, was the location for the connection with God?
Well, it's two things. The genitalia is basically that human ability, or that's basically two things. It's the idea of procreation and connection. And the whole world, but God basically made a human being to develop his world and connect to him by developing it. It's invest yourself, right? Sexuality is always, it's near, not just investing your genes in something or your DNA, you're investing yourself. There's always a feeling, meaning psychologically, right? Sexuality is such a deep thing, and in that arena of sexuality, so many deep things become present in terms of the personality and the person and the psychology behind what their needs are in terms of connection and whatever that is the deepest place in the human psyche where connection is happening. And that's really what it's all about. And it's not a coincidence. I mean, God made that it's about the investment of future, of life, so that God made a man to take the world further, to bring it to a hashlama on behalf of God. That's exactly what it is. It's invest in reality and the future with the idea of connection.
But it's funny, because you would have thought that connection was located in the mind, because it's a consciousness.
All true connection is ethereal, but all of that in this world we incorporate both physical and spiritual. And in our physical world, that is the place, that is the act where you get in touch with all that stuff. Although all that stuff is happening all the time. But that's what it's all about. I mean, I think on some level, I think this is intuitive. We all understand because it's not a chiddush, but it's important to come up with an articulation and understanding of this. That's why sexuality is such a problem, right? Meaning this whole idea of the Eitz Hadas, because it is meant to be the most holy thing. And by definition, because of the Eitz Hadas, it is the most sensitive and vulnerable thing. And it's so easy to become polluted. And that's why in every single culture, every metaphor for the lowest thing is an act of sex that doesn't have intimacy. When you want to talk about being taken advantage of, when you want to be talking about somebody, meaning the lowest thing is the most profane thing. What's the most profane thing? That which was meant to be so high, and it's only profane. That's why all the metaphors in colloquial language for the lowest things is an act of sex that is only lowered. I'm saying inherently we all understand this. Right. I'm just speaking it out because it's supposed to be the highest, most beautiful thing, and we have so much protecting around it because of this. This is where it all happens. That's the idea of the Ali Te'ena, that's the idea of the foreskin, that's the idea of the Eitz Hadas.
Shkoyach.
Okay.
Shkoyach. Kol hakavod.